Hi, everyone. My name is Ambriehl. I am the Assistant Director of Marketing and Communications with Destiny City Film Festival. Thank you so much for joining us virtually and in person. If you were able to make it to some of the in-person events, we're very happy that we could do that this year. And of course, we are very happy to have Hisonni Mustafa in conversation with us about the short film Blunt. So Hisonni, if you want to say a few words about yourself and about the film, feel free.
I am a filmmaker here in Las Vegas. It is my second time being a part of this wonderful film festival. Last year, we got to screen a feature entitled Takeout Girl, and this year you get to enjoy our short film, Blunt.
Yeah, and we are very glad to have you back. So thank you so much for bringing another one of your films to us. I guess I kind of want to start off with Takeout Girl and just talk about, so it screened with us last year as a feature film, and it's now streaming on Hulu, correct?
Yeah, we got picked up by Hulu, and we also got picked up by Comcast as a part of a 10-part film series about Asian American experiences here in the United States. So
great. Well, congratulations on that. And to the people watching, if you have not seen Takeout Girl and you have Hulu or wherever else it is, just go find it and be sure to watch that.
All streaming platforms.
Yes. And then, so also going off of Takeout Girl, I kind of wanted to ask, I noticed in the credits of this film, I saw some familiar names like Hetty Wong, who was the lead actress and I believe co-writer of Takeout Girl, right?
Yep.
Great. So could you just talk about the team and maybe how Takeout Girl had a little bit of influence on Blunt, or how you kind of transitioned into Blunt?
Okay, so Blunt is it's loosely based on a true story, and Hetty Wong was able to help me flesh it out. My producer, Caslin Rose, she was a major part of making this film come together, both from just story standpoint and just producing. Like, she helped with wardrobe, she helped with makeup, hair. So did Hetty. Hetty was all over the place. Those guys were just, they had their fingers in the cookie jar for sure. And there was a couple other familiar names. There was Alberto Triana and MJ Del Rosario. They came on from a producing standpoint and helped out quite a bit. And yeah, we just decided we wanted to make a project that was, for me, I wanted to see if I could make a project that was very dialogue driven. During the pandemic, the second season of Euphoria got delayed. And Sam Levinson is one of my favorite content creators / writers. And I noticed he did a dialogue driven episode to kind of bridge season 1 to season 2. And at that point, I had a short film, Blunt, which was kind of stalled because of COVID. And I was a little down, and I was like, no one's going to want to watch, a few minutes, 10, 15 minutes of people talking about a particular subject. And then I saw Rue's story, which came out right around Christmas of 2020. Yep, I think 2020. And it was 45 minutes of just people talking about important subjects. And I was like, this is going to work. I can do this.
That's great. I love that story. And I guess I want to ask, it's based on a true story. Could you give a little bit more detail about some of the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, Caslin Rose and I have both encountered very similar situations in terms of our relationships and how our parents dealt with it. And it's an amalgamation of a bunch of events, specifically me bonding with my mother-in-law over a campfire, some s'mores, and some really good weed. Mm-hmm. And it was funny how before that campfire, she really didn't like me. And after that campfire, I was her son-in-law. And it was a lot of good conversation. And it took years. That was 10 years into my relationship before I finally had that breakthrough. And I wish I just had the conversations that take place in Blunt right up front. I wish I had had the strength and the courage and the trust that people would see the intent of what I had to say and what I thought, and it would end up in a positive place, because it eventually did. We just wasted so much time. So I think the point of the film for me is to get people to not waste time.
Mm-hmm. So I guess elaborating off of that, why was it important for you to tell this story aside from what you just said?
Well, I think relationship issues, specifically when it comes to introducing someone you care about to your parents, it tends to go wrong for reasons that are less obvious than we jump to. For example, the main character, Aiden in Blunt, easily could have jumped to racism, much like I did in real life. But maybe there was a little bit more to it. Maybe there was more of a generational gap. Maybe people just have rough exteriors. And if you write it off as that, it's so easy for a person to just be like, I shouldn't even try, or I shouldn't have to, because that came across as racist, so that came across as sexist, when in reality, they just don't make them like they used to anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, we have very different generations, and what you could say back then and what you could do back then was very different. In a lot of ways, Blunt is almost like what do you call it? A translator for our generation. And like maybe some of the baby boomers, if you think about it, it's almost like what she really meant by this is, and what this millennial means by this is, and what this baby boomer means by this is. If only we could have someone to play referee in everyday conversations with our parents. Because I know my mom, oh man, my mom's gotten away with some really off-colored stuff. And if it weren't for me just being like, I guess you're old enough to have earned the right to say these things, I really, I could have been in some tough spots, So I think the film is just to kind of give people a jumping off point from which to have a decent conversation, and to remind people to give one another leeway in conversations,
I'm glad you bring that up, especially the generational gap, because I was curious if it was an intentional choice. And after, hearing what you said, it definitely was. But I really liked how, I feel like a lot of viewers, and maybe most viewers, would agree and empathize with Kate and Aiden. But of course, there are probably viewers who would see the parents and say, oh, well, they're being too hard on them. And you just need to understand that that's, how they grew up. That's what society was like back then. So you do a good job at writing the film to where you're not alienating either groups, and you definitely are bringing them together, which I thought was super interesting.
That was the goal, because I love my girlfriend. She is like the most important person in the world to me. How do you reconcile the idea that someone you love came from people that you didn't initially get along with? Like, they had to have done something right, and they had to have given her some of the qualities that you are inherently in love with. It's always difficult to kind of try and, you can't ignore the fact that they made the best person you've ever met. So for me, I think it was really important for me to represent them in a positive light, and to give them the consideration I may not have given them as a young, dumb, overly testosterone-driven young man. And, a Black man who, in reality, I have and continue to have a very tough time getting fair treatment in America. So it's a hair trigger sort of situation. And when I actually had a moment to sit down and talk with both of them, they were a lot more empathetic than I anticipated them to be. They actually wanted to listen. And again, I think writing this script and being with my in-laws taught me that you shouldn't listen for people to agree with you. There's a difference between agreeing with someone and empathizing with them. And I'm hoping this film helps shed light on the nuances that all relationships have.
Yeah, I think it did a really great job at that. So very impressive. And I guess on a similar note, they have these very intense conversations with Kate's parents the whole time, Kate and her dad, and then Aiden and Kate's mom. And you could have ended with some huge blow up, or just them deciding that the relationship wasn't going to work and then walking away from each other. But the ending is actually, it's pretty cordial. There's still maybe some of the tenseness there, but it's pretty cordial, and maybe even a little heartwarming, maybe. So why'd you want to end on that note? And when you were writing the story, did you know that's where you wanted to land?
I intended to land on a more solid message. But the truth is, once I started writing, and I was writing the mother and Aiden side of it, the mom just said something which sounds so schizophrenic, the fact that I'm saying the mom said something when I was sitting there writing it, but she said something that I couldn't argue with. And I was like, I was trying to push my fingers onto the keys and defend my side of things because Aiden is ultimately my side of things. But I couldn't, I had to appreciate the fact that she had the most important person in her life with a young man. And that young woman would be sharing a lot of the pain and trials and tribulations that come with being with that young man. And I didn't know what to say. So instead of forcing it, I let the character mull it over. I let the character understand that character needs more time to figure out what to say. I need more time to figure out what to say. And also Blunt is it's a pilot. It's a pilot episode for a series I'm doing. And this series is just an anthology of short films that all encompass coming of age moments for young people. And, the idea is somewhere in this city, there's another 20-something-year-old person experiencing one of the more growth-inducing moments of their young lives. And how do they deal with it? And I'm going into production on the second episode at the end of the month and the third episode at the end of March. So possibly there could be another episode coming up soon.
Well, let us know whenever and how that's going. We will definitely keep in touch and be looking forward to your next projects. I'm curious now that you mentioned that, are those also based on true stories, based on your personal experiences?
Other people's true stories.
Okay.
I'm always in a weird place. Like, I'm not a part of the LGBT community, but I learned a lot by referencing my family members who are, and actresses who are, actors who are, producers who are. And I felt really comfortable making this story. And now that I've had a film covering LGBT topics out there, I've realized that people consider it like a hot thing to do. But in reality, there's still resistance to these type of stories out there. And for me to walk away having a first or secondhand, whatever you want to call it, experience as to like experience of just people pushing back on whether or not those stories are what they want their communities to hear is profound as hell. For me anyway. Not only just the research and making it, but the after effect. I empathize a lot more than I did. I didn't know that it was going to be as difficult to get this message out as it is. And that's been very surprising. There was another part of that question. What did I miss? I can't remember. I can't remember. But I think there was what was it?
It was about the future projects and
future projects,
telling people stories.
Telling people stories. And the next project is it revolves around the Latin American community here in Las Vegas. Can't wait to tell that story about family. Again, family-oriented story. And the third story is also a true story about a single mom and her son's favorite teacher, who are at odds because the teacher doesn't believe the mom is doing a great enough job giving her child all the advantages in the world. And the mom feels like the teacher really doesn't understand what it's like to be a parent, let alone the parent of her child and to be a single mom. So to dive into those topics and shed light on them, for me, filmmaking is about making the audience grow with me, not just telling exactly what I know, but doing research, meeting new people, getting references for my scripts, having a community approve of the message that's in it, and then putting it out there for an audience to talk about and dissect and draw their own conclusions.
So has it been challenging for you to write these stories, just considering that you really are taking a deeply empathetic approach to various sides of an issue, and empathy can be hard a lot of times?
No, not really. It's a muscle. And if you don't use it, I'm sure it would be difficult. It was difficult at the beginning, but now it feels like I'm coming from a place of honesty when I write. And I think my intent is pretty strong, even on the page. I think there's a purity that goes on the page that people feel, understand, and wanna be a part of. And I think when you have that sort of momentum and that sort of push and that sort of positivity around a project, it feels good to go with it. Anytime I've struggled with a project, it's because there was insecurity, there was a muddiness in the message, even a muddiness in the intent for making the project. And with these 3 projects and a feature I'm going to be doing later on in the year, I can say without a hesitation that the purity of intent is there.
Well, that is beautiful and very inspirational words. I love hearing that. And going back to Blunt, I do want to ask, of course, I mean, I have many guesses and there's, we talked about the weed aspect of the film, but could you just kind of go into detail about the multiple meanings of the film's title?
Well, the most obvious is that they smoke a blunt, but it's my straight up me looking at screeners and programmers and saying, hey, this is a pretty straightforward project you're about to watch here. And also just the characters, the nature at which the characters interact with one another. They're being blunt, the filmmaker is being blunt, and they're enjoying a blunt. So those are kind of the angles from which I came at it.
And then as far as casting, could you talk about that process and how you found these actors?
These actors are all Las Vegas locals. And I think, so when I came up with doing this project, at first, talk about purity of intent. The goal was to improve upon what I had already done in my career. It was a very selfish intent. And don't get me wrong, I still want all my projects to do well. But with that came, I need to go ahead and get this star name from LA or I'm going to move the production to LA. And then I realized that was an idiotic way of going about it, because the truth of the matter is I've spent so much money and so much time building a production company, and the whole thought process behind everything I do is to try and create films at the speed of thought. And creating at the speed of thought doesn't mean relying on asset. It means not relying on things that aren't immediately around you. If I can't count on a person being in my film, then, I shouldn't. So I started to look locally. I started to see what I could do locally. And now I'm starting to have a strong understanding of what we can accomplish locally. I mean, this project was shot on the weekend, on a weekend last May. It was edited in 10 days, less than 10 days. And it cost me like less than $2,000. The cafe set, I built that. Like, I spent weeks buying cheap neon signs and fake plants. That's the front hallway of a dance studio.
That's impressive.
So for me, I think whatever this film accomplishes, it kind of sends a strong message to me as a filmmaker that I can get up and do this any weekend I want, because there's talent right here in town. I'm right here in town. There's businesses that are so supportive of the arts that I could get up, and if I really put my mind to it, I could make a film that could be seen nationwide or across the world from right here in Summerlin, Nevada. So that was kind of the goal.
Great. And thank you so much. You've spoken very well about the goal and your, the purity of intent and just all these wonderful words that you're throwing out about the film. I really am enjoying this conversation. And I always like to ask, is there anything that you'd like to share about the film or about the production, about yourself, that this film really did for you? Any cool anecdotes, anything that you learned about yourself, really, like literally anything about the film that I maybe wouldn't ask about that you'd like to share?
Well, the parts of it that came from me, I think they really helped. I think they helped me and my girlfriend grow a lot closer, because there were things I articulated on the page that I that I couldn't articulate in 15 years of being together. Wow. And I think it was interesting watching her read the script and being like, oh my God, like, I never knew you felt like that. So I think whenever art can heal like that, it reiterates that's what I should be doing. And that's what, what artists should be doing, using art to heal themselves. And of course, my goal was to help others avoid the need to have to heal the way I do. If someone's in year one of their relationship and these things happen, I hope the film makes them know that it's not an automatic strike out, you're out of here to the parents or to the family. There's got to be some reason why they acted out the way they did. And if you really love the person you're with, it may be worth investigating. It may be worth having a conversation about, not just shutting down. And don't use shut down words either, but we all know those are out there. Try to avoid those. I think I learned what my community is capable of, and that includes Destiny City, because you guys have such a high standard. You can't just submit to a film festival like this and think you're going to get in. Like, when, to hear that I'm welcomed back again, it's the reason why I'm going to have the energy and motivation to go on and make another film. And like I said, Destiny City was a part of the journey for my feature film, which then got picked up by Hulu. And Your Laurel is in our trailer on Hulu. So you guys helped us get there. And I don't know where I'm going right now, but I do know that you guys are helping me get there. So thank you, Destiny City. Thank you, Destiny City's audience. And hopefully I can join you guys in person one day.
Thank you so much for having this conversation, for sharing your story, and for being willing to return. We really do appreciate it. So yeah, thank you so much. Again, to the audience, people watching, please go watch Takeout Girl, and of course, tell your friends about Blunt as well. And did we lose him?
I'm back.
Okay, great. No problem. Well, that was pretty much all. So yeah, thank you again, Hisonni. It's been a great conversation. You're always welcome at Destiny City Film Festival.
Thank you.